proud of the project, but I'm really pleased also just selfishly to um, just again for health and quality of life to reestablish. Because here's another thing too. It's like talking about there's a grand old tradition in acting of character transformation, and it's something that people really covet and they chase after. But I think that especially in the past 20 years, I mean, it's like exercise science. It's just it's become such a more integrated process, part of the process, I think, in our industry. But it's also the knowledge base has just grown so much that people can start to approach this stuff and not in some sort of kind of superstitious, like, bat's wings and bee pollen type way. It's actually informed and science based, and they have somebody to hold them accountable and to measure their progress. I saw this interview years ago of Benicio del Toro talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and that which did a lot of crazy things for his career, but that he had just, or even what's his name, Vincent D'Onofrio for Full Metal Jacket. Mm-hmm. That when you're going up one way, especially back then, guys would just pile on the weight. And I think Benicio del Toro talked about it. I ate like 6 donuts a day leading up to it.
That seems to be the go-to, the donuts.
Yeah. What the reality is he just worked his physique. And he said he was just never, because he was a beanpole before then, and he was never the same afterwards. And he said, I think in this interview, that if I could do it again, I know now to hit the weights at the same time, because you inflate your body. And then that way, when you start to cut at the end of it, all of this water weight and sugar and fat and salt, it just kind of pours off of and it's less like you're morphing your body, because it's like an elastic band, right? And if you stretch it too much in one direction, then it maintains this new normal. And it's so much harder to go back the other direction once you've kind of established it in this certain range. But if you there's things like trickery, like water retention and cuts and things like this, smoke and mirror stuff that you can do to kind of nudge it in certain directions aesthetically, but not completely alter and compromise your physique in one way or the other. And so I think that I'm really grateful, because now having a base of musculature and being in a certain range, I'm in much better of a place to, and with Barry as a resource, to go either way and not be as worried about how am I ever going to get back,
Like we've tried to anchor you here where you are now.
Yeah.
To allow him to be agile in either direction. Jack's super inquisitive.
Yeah.
Detail orientated and really wants to understand the process. He's definitely not going to be someone that you can just tell him what to do and he's just going to blindly go and do it. Understanding is a real part of the process for him for buy-in, just to understand it. It's how we talk to performers naturally. It's like the education process. Like he's super interested in that, but that makes it really easy to work with in that way, because I don't really have to say anything twice to him, because he's like everything sticks. Everything does, to the point where I've got to be careful of what I say, so I make sure that I don't say anything wrong, because he'll bloody remember. That's not what he said. Where do you reckon you're at now, Jack?
Oh, probably high 190s. But I'm kind of up. I think I'm trying to go up for strength and then cut around leading up into the summer or something like that. I'm pretty strong now. Again, I don't know. I couldn't rattle off numbers for like compound exercises, but we're kind of, I think, back on track. The area where we were pre-surgery, I think.
Yeah, you're back squatting 220 for 15s.
Yeah.
Pounds, 100 kilos, 15 reps times 4. Like, you've got that in the bag, haven't you?
Yeah. Legs are definitely strong, which is great, because I don't feel any pain anymore. I don't know. I'd like to maybe put on like another, if I could, 5 to 10 pounds of muscle and then cut, maybe. So we'll see. Yeah. But it's we're at a median right now.
Do this catch up, by the way, so it's quite good that I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
You are?
We would do this catch up, me and Jack. So it's
really? Perfect.
I'm just basically getting a shortcut.
I was thinking, what can we do next?
Yeah.
Because it changes, doesn't it? Like, there's things on the horizon that like you would think they're going to happen, then maybe they get delayed or they don't happen.
Yeah. Yes, that guy. pushed, something else has come in, and now my plans have readjusted. Yes, you're right. I did have to tell you that anyway. Yes.
That's why you are where you are, like, wasn't it? Like, that
Right.
was the point where it's like strong and conditioned for that weight to be able to go.
Yeah.
Jack, can I ask you, just going back to obviously the film,
Sure.
how, if you don't mind me asking you this, how did you manage, we've touched on it a little bit, how did you manage your mental health essentially during those times of when you were really cutting, or, you know, towards the end, the Olympic stuff?
Barry said detail oriented. Detail oriented is like a synonym of neurotic too, right? So I'm a very, very, as any of the other guys at the boat would probably tell you, an incredibly almost like neurotic martyrdom kind of a person, which can be unpleasant sometimes, especially when the stakes are really high. So I'm not a great judge, because I think that it was a really, like we said, it was, everybody took the job incredibly serious. So it was kind of a pressure cooker from the beginning because the stakes were so high. So I would say that by the end, actually, though, by the races, it was kind of a balance because everybody was in really good spirits and kind of relishing in the absurdity of it all, but also deadly serious whenever the cameras were rolling, whenever we had to do a pass or do a training session. But by the end, I think that there was, which is funny because it's the highest stakes part of the film, but we had already been through so much. We've been through 4 months or something, 4.5 months, 5 months. And the weather had turned. It was blistering hot in England. It was right before all the fires, you know, maybe a month or two before. And we were up in the Cotswolds and we were on the lake in the reservoir every single day. So I think that the morale was pretty high by the end. I think that would probably be something going forward. Again, like I said, it's like when you're kind of in it, you don't really know. Apart from aesthetically, you aren't really, or at least I haven't been really aware of what kind of a state you're in until you come out of it. And then you can look back and you can say, well, I was having, you know, my short-term memory was very cloudy, or my attention span was very wandering, or I was very irritable, or any of these things. I think at the time, it was just such an intense anxiety-filled process. I wasn't really aware or catering, I guess, the mental health aspect as much as I could. But I will say that I think that being in an environment where there's such a sense of camaraderie, and when you have so many resources and people that are invested in you and checking up on you all the time throughout several parts of the day, I never felt too low because I felt held up by this whole little world that we constructed through the process of the filming. So it never felt like I was despairing or anything. I felt like anybody else. It's like pushed in, even if in simulated extreme circumstances, you just get very goal oriented, you know? So I wasn't really as aware of the day to day. I was more just focused, you know, like just possessed by this goal to finish this thing.
Being there and seeing Jack, and my experience of Jack at that time, he's very internal looking and reflective. So in those places at the end of takes, like, it became a bit of a joke where Jack would just beat himself up. Like he's like such his own biggest critic. And then, you know, after takes, everyone sort of, like Jack said, everyone was so supportive and everyone was so tuned into how there's 9 boys there with different processes and different ways of doing things and different ways of working. I think very quickly everyone sort of respected what everyone else needed. And like Jack in his time, and, you know, perhaps it's got, obviously I've worked with him in this circumstance, but you know, it might be when he's less calorie restricted and putting himself under less stress physically like that, where he needs that alone time, needs that reflection time, needs to look at a monitor in those moments, and then come away when he realizes, that was pretty bloody good actually. And then
it's not so bad, huh?
And then join the group, and everything, like, you know, was sort of normal. But I'd say, like, the boys were really, especially when he was going through those days and those times where we were cutting, like, the boys didn't know about it. Like, they were protective of him in those moments. Do you know what I mean? They had they had their eye on him. We had a really attentive and great group of ADs who'd done the same. And I think a lot of my work I overlapped with them quite a lot because I was looking after their food and their drink and doing stuff that they'd normally do. So it freed them up actually to do some other stuff, because that, you're close to that detail to be able to give them what they required and stuff, and try and keep on top of the quality. The stuff like, Jack said about the neuroticism and all stuff like that, like it never spilled over. Like there was never, it was only probably, I suspect it was all sort of much more internal and like a dialogue or monologue that Jack had of himself, because externally, once, come back in to the group and had the moment that he required, everything was fine. And everything was, as it were, in a supportive, like cohesive group. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's always a couple of flare-ups in any team activity in there, but it was only because everybody wanted the same outcome. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone wanted it so badly and was so dedicated to it. I could count, I think, from my experience, I could count that happened a handful of times in the times that we were there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's to be expected, exactly as you say. Yeah,
you'd be sort of a bit worried if it didn't.
Yeah,
the rowing coaches said that as well. It's like the amount of times, like, almost come to blows, like teams is like,
it's like the passion almost built up, or because
everything at such high performance and there's such small margins.
Yeah, any of that stuff definitely came out of people wanting to get it right and just be like doggedly pursuing that. Also, by the way, you said which you mentioned, I definitely think in terms of broadening that network of that feeling of support, the ADs, the PAs, it was such a culture of everybody was so in on the mission together, and I can't thank, I guess, the whole ensemble of crew and HMU and PAs and the ADs and just the general vibe that was on set all day, every day through the many months that we were shooting it. I didn't feel like an island. I felt very much enmeshed in this community that had been established on the set. And it was hugely helpful, I think, for everybody through the process, considering that the magnitude of what we were all trying to accomplish. It can just get so overwhelming. So to have all of this support and all these familiar faces, not just from filming, but from training too, early on, there'd be ADs and there'd be PAs, and it'd be the same. There was overlap, people that would be in with us with Baz in the first 2-3 months to all the way through the entire shoot. So it was just, there was this through line established to all these familiar faces and friendships that we had around us throughout the whole thing. That was incredibly helpful, because it's not always like that,
No, yeah.
We wrapped at the end of the day, right? And like everyone else goes their separate ways. Like, we were all in hotels for a lot of the time. Some were in a caravan park, which was a delight for them.
Yeah.
Everyone would go and do their thing, but Jack still had, still had to live that calorie deficit and like that life.
Yeah.
So that other people could very much switch off in a way that he wasn't able to, in fairness. But I think there was a lot of football being watched, and what was nice was like, the boys would get together, watch football in one of their places, and there was never any pressure for people to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you could go and do what you needed to do, couldn't you? Sit down, have some quiet time, laugh at Liverpool fans who weren't having quite such a good time at that moment.
Yeah. Also pick up basketball. Honestly, we gave that caravan park a little bit more a harder time than we needed to, because the caravan park is actually much beloved, I think, by everybody now, because it was just such a good excuse for everybody to get together as a community at the end of the day, because we were in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing to do.
They played a lot of basketball. Like,
yeah, we did.
When we talk about programming and trying to like manage fatigue levels and that, there were some big basketball matches that went on. But,
at the end of the day. And the thing is, Joel is such a monster. I gave him some hard elbows in the face several times, because nobody could just guard him. He's just so much taller than everybody else. And he also just happened to be the best. He just had the best shot out of anybody. Joel definitely took a couple of kung fu elbows from me right in the middle of his forehead.
Joel's about 6'6", wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a big guy. Yeah. Also, 6'6", what was he? 3 seat, which is the most ineffectual seat in the entire, in terms of the height disparity throughout the boat. He was in the least like effective seat for somebody of his body profile to be in. He's just holding the least amount of water comparatively to his size. He should have been like, whatever.
It was funny. It made his day anyway. He was up there with the Americans. The other English were like,
yeah.
But to say basketball's not their game.
No, but they tried very hard. Will had some eccentric shooting form, I would say. Yeah. Luke is also really great. Luke's like Allen Iverson. He's just through the legs. He's really quick. He's super quick. I wouldn't say you wouldn't expect it, but just like in terms of just like getting past the defender and just the instant quickness, Luke is like really deadly. So anyway, yeah, it was fun.
He underplayed that last when we spoke, to be fair. But we've got to get Will. His physical comedy is like naturally incredible. Weird stuff and that. And I didn't see the basketball. I saw a couple of bits on set when George got involved in that, and the boys.
Yeah. They made him a crazy high hoop on set. It was like 10 feet off I guess a standard hoop is 10 feet, but it was like way dramatically high. And we played a couple of little shoot arounds with him too. He's got a good shot as well.
I could only imagine the way that Will was throwing the ball up. I can almost picture it.
He's got spaghetti arms.
Yeah. Nothing to do with me, by the way, so.
Yeah.
Jack, no, it's amazing. Right. You crack on. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. So great to meet you. We'll speak soon.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.